Mother kicks daughter out after she gives birth to twins. 3 days later, the police knock on her door. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The bright fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital cast harsh shadows across Rebecca Adams' face as another contraction gripped her body. At just 19, she clutched the metal railings of the hospital bed, her knuckles white with strain. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought back the scream building in her throat. "You're doing great, Rebecca," encouraged Eleanor, the middle-aged nurse who hadn't left her side for the past 6 hours. "Just breathe through it. That's it." Rebecca had never felt so alone. The father of her babies, her boyfriend of 2 years, had disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant with twins. Her friends had slowly distanced themselves, uncomfortable with her situation and her mother. Rebecca winced, not from pain but from the memory of Vivian Adams' cold eyes when she'd first learned of the pregnancy. "I think it's time," Eleanor called to the doctor, who rushed in, followed by a team of medical staff. What followed was a blur of pain, voices, and finally, the miraculous sound of crying. First one, then another. "Congratulations," the doctor said, placing a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket in her arms. "You have a healthy baby boy." Before Rebecca could process this miracle, a second baby, wrapped in pink, was placed beside her brother, and a beautiful baby girl, Eleanor added, tears glistening in her kind eyes. "Do you have names for them?" Rebecca looked down at their tiny faces, so perfect it made her heart ache. "Lucas and Lily," she whispered. Names she had chosen months ago during lonely nights when she'd talked to her growing belly, promising these children that she would give them everything she never had. Outside the delivery room, Nathan Parker walked briskly through the hospital corridor. At 35, the self-made millionaire was known for his business acumen and philanthropy. Today, he was visiting the pediatric ward to finalize a donation for new equipment. As he passed the maternity wing, the sound of babies crying caught his attention. Through the partially open door, he glimpsed a young woman holding twins, her face revealing both joy and unmistakable fear. Something about her vulnerability struck a chord deep within him, perhaps because he recognized the look of someone facing the world entirely alone. Later that afternoon, as Rebecca prepared to leave with her newborns, the hospital door opened to reveal Vivian Adams. At 53, she carried herself with rigid posture, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Mother," Rebecca said softly, hope flickering briefly in her chest. Vivian's eyes swept over the twins without warmth. "Are you ready to go?" "Yes," Rebecca replied, carefully placing Lucas and Lily in the carrier the hospital had provided. "They're so beautiful, aren't they?" Her mother didn't answer, merely signing the discharge papers with quick, angry strokes. The drive home was shrouded in suffocating silence. Rebecca tried several times to engage her mother, pointing out Lily's tiny fingers or the way Lucas seemed to frown just like his grandmother. But Vivian stared straight ahead, her profile carved from stone. When they finally pulled into the driveway of the modest 2-story house where Rebecca had grown up, Vivian turned off the engine but didn't move. "To get out, I've given this a lot of thought," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "I will not have those children in my house." Rebecca felt as though she'd been doused with ice water. What are you saying?" "The neighbors already talk enough about us," Vivian continued, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I won't face their judgment because of your mistakes." "They're not mistakes," Rebecca whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "They're my babies." "You have 1 hour to collect your things and leave," Vivian said, finally turning to look at her. "Daughter, I've already packed most of your clothes." In the back seat, Lily began to whimper as if sensing the tension. "Mother, please," Rebecca begged, her voice breaking. "Where am I supposed to go? How will I take care of them?" Vivian's expression didn't soften. "You should have thought of that before you got yourself pregnant." As Rebecca looked into her mother's cold, unforgiving eyes, she realized with crushing certainty that there would be no changing her mind. In the space of a heartbeat, whatever security she thought she had left crumbled to dust. In the hospital across town, Nathan Parker found himself unable to forget the young mother he'd glimpsed. He couldn't explain why her image haunted him, but as he signed the final papers for his donation, he found himself asking the hospital administrator about her. "I'm sorry, Mr. Parker," the woman replied. "I can't share patient information." Nathan nodded in understanding. Yet as he walked to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again, and that when they did, it would change everything. Rebecca stood on the sidewalk in front of her childhood home, a diaper bag slung over one shoulder, and the carrier with her newborn twins clutched in her shaking hands. The front door had closed behind her with devastating finality, and now the weight of her new reality crashed down upon her. "It's okay, sweethearts," she whispered to Lucas and Lily, who miraculously remained asleep despite their mother's world falling apart. "We're going to be fine." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, and with it, Rebecca's hope diminished. She had exactly $43.27 to her name, all the cash she'd managed to grab from her dresser drawer before Vivian had practically pushed her out the door. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and scrolled through her contacts. Most of her friends had drifted away during her pregnancy, uncomfortable with her situation or pressured by their parents to distance themselves from the bad influence. Still, there had to be someone who would help. After 4 unanswered calls and 3 apologetic text responses, Rebecca's last hope vanished. Even Megan, her best friend since middle school, couldn't offer more than empty sympathy. "So sorry, Becca. My parents won't let me. Maybe try a shelter?" Tears blurred her vision as she began walking away from the only home she'd ever known. The weight of the carrier grew heavier with each step, but she pushed forward, her mind racing through increasingly desperate options. The local park was only a few blocks away. At least there would be benches where she could rest and figure out her next move. As she settled onto a wooden bench, Lily began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up in hunger. "I know, baby," Rebecca murmured, fumbling to prepare a bottle with the limited supplies she'd managed to pack. As she fed her daughter, an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes approached them. "What beautiful babies," the woman commented, sitting down at the far end of the bench. "Twins?" Rebecca nodded, trying to wipe away her tears before they were noticed. "Yes, Lucas and Lily. They're just 3 days old." "I'm Martha," the woman said, her eyes taking in Rebecca's hastily packed bags and the desperation she couldn't hide. "Are you all right, dear?" Something in Martha's gentle tone broke through the last of Rebecca's defenses. "No," she admitted, her voice cracking. "My mother kicked us out. I have nowhere to go and I don't know what to do." Martha's expression softened with compassion. "There's a community shelter on Oak Street that might have space for tonight. I volunteer there sometimes." She hesitated, then added, "I'd offer my own home, but my daughter and her family are visiting and there's simply no room." "The shelter would be wonderful," Rebecca said gratefully. "Thank you." As they walked together toward the shelter, Rebecca learned that Martha had been a kindergarten teacher for 40 years before retiring. "Children are precious gifts," she said, watching as Rebecca carefully adjusted the blanket around Lucas. "I've never understood how anyone could turn their back on their own." The shelter was a converted church basement with fluorescent lighting and the smell of industrial cleaner. A harried-looking woman at the front desk shook her head when they arrived. "We're technically full, but—" Her eyes fell on the sleeping twins. "We can make an exception for tonight. Just tonight, though. We have families waiting for beds." That night, lying on a narrow cot with her babies nestled beside her, Rebecca stared at the ceiling, tears silently tracking down her cheeks. The shelter was noisy, with other occupants coughing and shifting throughout the night. In the dim light, she studied her children's perfect faces. "I promise I'll figure this out," she whispered fiercely. "I won't let you down." Across town, Nathan Parker sat in his spacious penthouse office, the city lights twinkling below him. But his mind wasn't on the spectacular view or the contracts awaiting his signature. Instead, he kept seeing the young mother from the hospital, Something about her had struck a chord deep within him. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, pushing away from his desk. He had no connection to this woman, didn't even know her name, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to help her somehow. Picking up his phone, he called Eleanor, the nurse he'd befriended during his regular visits to the hospital's pediatric ward. "Nathan, it's nearly midnight," Eleanor answered, her voice thick with sleep. "I'm sorry, but I need to ask about a patient. A young woman who delivered twins yesterday." Eleanor sighed. "You know I can't share patient information. It's against hospital policy and the law." "I understand, but—" Nathan paused, unsure how to explain his inexplicable concern. "I just want to make sure she's okay." There was a long silence on the other end before Eleanor spoke again. "All I can tell you is her first name, Rebecca, and that she left the hospital today with her mother." Another pause. "Nathan, why are you so interested in this girl?" It was a question he couldn't answer even to himself. "I don't know," he admitted. "Something about her situation feels familiar." After hanging up, Nathan walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. He'd been fortunate enough to escape his own difficult childhood, building a life and fortune beyond anything he could have imagined. But not everyone got lucky. He thought of the young mother, Rebecca, and her twins, hoping they were warm and safe tonight. Tomorrow, he decided, he would make some inquiries. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Morning came too quickly at the shelter. Rebecca was awakened by Lily's hungry cries, which soon triggered Lucas to join in. As she tended to them, the reality of her situation crashed over her anew. This was just the beginning of her struggle, and she had no idea where they would go when the shelter's doors closed behind them later that day. The thought terrified her, but as she looked down at her children, a fierce determination took root. Somehow she would find a way forward. For them. Little did she know that across town a man she'd never met was already setting events in motion that would change all of their lives forever. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of Nathan Parker's office, illuminating the man as he paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. His normally immaculate appearance showed subtle signs of strain, his tie slightly loosened, the shadow of stubble darkening his jaw. "I understand the privacy concerns, Dr. Mercer," Nathan said, his voice calm despite his growing frustration. "But I'm not asking for medical details. I just need to know if there's a way to help." He listened to the hospital administrator's polite but firm refusal, then ended the call with a sigh. 3 hours of phone calls had yielded nothing. The image of Rebecca and her newborns remained fixed in his mind, driving him to action even as he questioned his own unusual persistence. "Mr. Parker." His assistant, David, appeared in the doorway. "Your 10 o'clock was canceled, but Eleanor from Memorial Hospital is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she insists on seeing you." Nathan straightened immediately. "Send her in." Eleanor Jenkins entered the office with the confident stride of someone who had spent decades navigating hospital hallways. At 58, her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had witnessed countless moments of both joy and heartbreak. "I probably shouldn't be here," she began without preamble, "but I couldn't stop thinking about your call last night. Please sit down." Nathan gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I appreciate you coming." Eleanor settled into the chair, studying him carefully. "First, I need to understand why you're so invested in this young woman's situation. I've known you for 5 years, Nathan. You've donated millions to the pediatric ward, but you've never inquired about a specific patient before." Nathan leaned back, considering his words carefully. "When I was 16, my mother kicked me out," he said finally. "I was homeless for 8 months before a high school teacher found out and took me in. That man changed the trajectory of my life." Understanding softened Eleanor's expression. "And you see yourself in Rebecca's situation, except she has 2 newborns depending on her," Nathan replied. "I only had myself to worry about." Eleanor nodded, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small notepad. "I'm not giving you her personal information," she clarified. "But Yesterday I overheard something concerning. She explained how she had been checking on Rebecca before discharge when her mother arrived. From outside the room, Eleanor had heard Vivian telling Rebecca that she had one chance to get this right, and that she wouldn't tolerate any more embarrassment. The way she spoke to her daughter, Eleanor shook her head. It wasn't the voice of someone offering support. When they left, Rebecca looked terrified. Nathan absorbed this information, his concern deepening. Do you have any way of checking if she made it home safely? I could call for a welfare check, Eleanor suggested. Say I'm a concerned healthcare worker, which is true. Would you? Nathan asked. I just need to know she's okay, then I can put this whole thing out of my mind. But even as he said it, Nathan doubted his own words. Something told him this wasn't going to be that simple. While Nathan and Eleanor were discussing her fate, Rebecca was walking aimlessly through the city streets, the baby carrier feeling heavier with each step. The shelter had provided breakfast, but at 9 a.m., everyone had been required to leave until the evening check-in at 7 p.m. 10 hours to somehow get through with 2 newborns and nowhere to go. She found herself in a small park, settling on a bench beneath a shady tree. Lucas and Lily were miraculously sleeping, giving her a moment to think. She needed a job, a place to live, childcare. The list of impossibilities grew longer by the minute. This looks like a party, a cheerful voice interrupted her thoughts. Rebecca looked up to see a woman in her mid-30s with curly red hair and a friendly smile. Mind if I join you? Rebecca nodded, shifting slightly to make room. The woman sat down, immediately cooing at the sleeping twins. They're beautiful, she said. How old? Just 4 days, Rebecca replied, managing a small smile despite her exhaustion. Wow, you're fresh out of the hospital then. I'm Sophia, by the way. I own the cafe across the street. She pointed to a small storefront with a bright blue awning that read, Sophia's Place. I'm Rebecca. These are Lucas and Lily. Sophia chatted easily, but Rebecca noticed her observant eyes taking in the overstuffed diaper bag, Rebecca's rumpled appearance, and the lack of a stroller for the twins. After a few minutes, Sophia's tone changed slightly. Forgive me if I'm overstepping, she said carefully. But is everything all right? You look like you've been through the ringer. Perhaps it was Sophia's genuine concern, or maybe Rebecca had simply reached her breaking point. But the whole story came pouring out. Her mother's rejection, the night at the shelter, her complete lack of options. By the time she finished, Sophia's expression had shifted from concern to determination. Okay, first things first. You need a safe place for today. My cafe has a small room in the back. It's not much, but it's private and you can rest there. I couldn't impose, Rebecca began. Nonsense, Sophia interrupted. I have a daughter in college. If she were in your situation, I'd hope someone would help her. She stood up decisively. Come on, I'll make you something to eat and we can figure out next steps. The back room of Sophia's cafe was small but clean, with a comfortable couch and a small table. For the first time since leaving the hospital, Rebecca felt a flicker of hope. As she fed the twins, Sophia brought in a sandwich and a cup of tea. I've been thinking, Sophia said, sitting across from her. I need help at the cafe, especially for the morning rush. It's not much, but if you're interested, the job is yours. You can bring the babies. My customers would love them. Rebecca stared at her, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You'd do that for me? You don't even know me. Sophia smiled. Sometimes we just need to trust our instincts. Mine are telling me you're a good person who's had a tough break. As they discussed the details, neither woman noticed the elderly man sitting at a table near the front window, watching them with interest. Howard Jenkins, recently retired from the police force and husband to nurse Eleanor, pulled out his phone and dialed his wife. Ellie, remember that young mother with twins you mentioned? I think I just found her. Across town, Eleanor had just finished telling Nathan about Howard's retirement habit of having morning coffee at Sophia's cafe when her phone rang. She listened intently, then turned to Nathan with wide eyes. You're not going to believe this, she said. Howard just spotted Rebecca at the cafe where he has breakfast. She's with the owner, Sophia Miller. Nathan stood immediately, grabbing his jacket. Let's go. As his driver navigated through the city streets toward the cafe, Nathan found himself rehearsing what he would say to this young woman he couldn't stop thinking about. How could he offer help without seeming intrusive or threatening? Why did he feel so strongly that he needed to be involved? He didn't have answers to these questions. But as the car pulled up in front of Sophia's place, he knew that whatever happened next would change multiple lives forever, including his own. Tijor. Bell above the door of Sophia's place jingled as Nathan and Eleanor entered. The cafe was quaint with mismatched furniture and local artwork adorning the walls. A few customers lingered over late morning coffee, including Howard, who nodded in their direction. "There she is," Eleanor whispered, gesturing toward the counter, where Sophia was showing Rebecca how to operate the espresso machine. Nathan froze, taking in the sight of Rebecca. In the hospital, he'd only caught a glimpse of her, but now he could see her clearly. The exhaustion etched in her young face, the determined set of her shoulders as she balanced one of the twins against her hip while learning her new task. "Maybe this was a mistake," Nathan muttered, suddenly uncertain. "She seems like she's figuring things out." Eleanor gave him a gentle push forward. "Go on, just introduce yourself." As they approached, Sophia looked up with the practiced smile of a cafe owner, but her expression quickly changed to one of recognition when she saw Eleanor. "Elle, what a surprise!" Sophia exclaimed, coming around the counter to embrace her. "Howard didn't mention you were stopping by." "It was a spontaneous decision," Eleanor replied, then gestured to Nathan. "This is Nathan Parker. He's a major donor to the hospital." Rebecca looked up at the mention of the hospital, her eyes widening slightly as they met Nathan's. She instinctively held Lily closer, her posture becoming defensive. "Hello," Nathan said, his usual confidence faltering. I saw you at the hospital the other day, with your twins." Rebecca's brow furrowed. "You were watching me?" "No, not like that," Nathan hastened to clarify. "I was there for a charity event and I happened to see you. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Sophia looked between them with interest. "Rebecca, why don't you take a break? I'll watch the babies while you chat with Mr. Parker and Eleanor." Despite her reluctance, Rebecca allowed Sophia to take Lily, and they moved to a quiet table in the corner. Lucas remained asleep in his carrier nearby. "I don't understand," Rebecca said once they were seated. "Why would you be concerned about me?" Nathan exchanged a glance with Eleanor before responding. "I grew up in difficult circumstances," he explained carefully. "When I saw you at the hospital, something about your situation reminded me of my own past." Rebecca's expression remained guarded. "So this is what, charity?" "Not exactly," Nathan replied. "Think of it as someone who's been through hardship, wanting to help another person facing their own challenges." Before Rebecca could respond, the cafe door burst open and a police officer entered, scanning the room until his eyes landed on their table. "Rebecca Adams?" he asked, approaching them. "Yes," Rebecca replied, her voice trembling. "I'm Officer James Cooper. We received a report concerning you and your children. Would you mind coming to the station to answer a few questions?" The color drained from Rebecca's face. "My babies, they can come too," Officer Cooper assured her, his tone gentler than his words. "This isn't an arrest, just a routine follow-up." Nathan stood. "I'm Nathan Parker, a friend of the family," he said with a confidence that surprised even himself. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "We received a complaint from Vivian Adams about her daughter and grandchildren," Officer Cooper explained. "She's claiming abandonment." Rebecca gasped. "She kicked me out. How could she?" "That's why we need to talk," the officer interrupted, "to understand all sides of the situation." Nathan placed a steadying hand on Rebecca's shoulder. "I'll come with you," he said, "and I'll call my lawyer to meet us there." As they gathered the babies and prepared to leave, Rebecca looked at Nathan with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. Nathan's answer was simple. "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner. The police." Station smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Rebecca sat rigidly in a hard plastic chair, Lucas and Lily sleeping peacefully in their carriers beside her. Officer Cooper had led them to a small room. Not an interrogation room, he'd emphasized, but a family consultation space. The pale blue walls and children's drawings did little to ease Rebecca's anxiety. Nathan sat beside her, his presence surprisingly comforting for someone she'd just met. He'd made 3 phone calls on the way to the station, one to his lawyer, one to Sophia, asking her to close the cafe and join them, and one to Martha from the shelter, whose number Rebecca had fortunately saved. "Try to stay calm," Nathan said quietly. "Jessica is one of the best family lawyers in the city. She'll be here any minute." Rebecca nodded, though her heart continued to race. "I don't understand how my mother could do this. She's the one who threw us out, and now she's claiming I abandoned my babies." "Some people rewrite history to protect themselves," Nathan replied, his voice carrying a weight that suggested personal experience. "It's easier than admitting they did something wrong." The door opened, and Officer Cooper entered with a smartly dressed Asian woman in her 40s. "Ms. Adams, this is Detective Lynn from Family Services. She specializes in cases involving children." Detective Lynn sat across from them, her expression professional but not unkind. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Adams. I understand this must be difficult with newborns." Rebecca straightened. "My mother is lying. She kicked us out of the house 3 days ago, right after we came home from the hospital. She said she couldn't handle the shame of having a teenage daughter with babies." Detective Lynn nodded, making notes. "We'll get to that. First, could you tell me where you and your children have been staying?" As Rebecca explained about the shelter and Sophia's cafe, the detective's pen moved quickly across her notepad. When she finished, Detective Lynn looked up. "Your mother tells a different story. She claims you left voluntarily and hasn't heard from you since, causing her great distress." "That's not true," Rebecca exclaimed, loud enough to make Lily stir. She lowered her voice, gently rocking the carrier. "She gave me 1 hour to pack and leave. She said she wouldn't have those children in her house." The door opened again, and a woman with a sleek dark bob and sharp eyes entered. "I'm Jessica Chen, Ms. Adams' attorney," she announced, setting her briefcase on the table. "I'd like a moment with my client before this continues." "Of course," Detective Lynn replied, standing. "Officer Cooper and I will wait outside." When they were alone, Jessica turned to Rebecca. "Nathan briefed me on the way over. I need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything, about your relationship with your mother and what happened when you brought the twins home." Rebecca took a deep breath and began recounting her childhood with Vivian, the coldness, the criticism, the impossibly high standards. She described her mother's reaction to her pregnancy, the threats to disown her, and finally, the ultimatum that had left her and the twins homeless. Jessica listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. "Do you have any proof of what happened? Text messages, voicemails, witnesses?" "The neighbors might have seen me standing outside with all my bags," Rebecca offered weakly. "But I don't have messages. My mother always preferred to criticize me, in person." "What about before, during your pregnancy? Any texts showing her attitude then?" Rebecca pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages. "Here," she said, finding a particularly harsh exchange from her 6th month. "And there are more." Jessica reviewed the messages, her expression grim. "This establishes a pattern of behavior. It's a start." She turned to Nathan. "You mentioned a woman named Martha. From the shelter?" "She's on her way," Nathan confirmed. "She found Rebecca and the twins in the park that first night." "Good. Witness testimony will help." Jessica closed her notebook. "Rebecca, when they come back in, let me do most of the talking. If they ask you a direct question, answer truthfully but briefly. The less emotional, the better." When Detective Lynn and Officer Cooper returned, they were accompanied by a third person, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. "This is Dr. Reeves, a social worker who specializes in family reunification," Detective Lynn explained. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. "Reunification?" You want to send me back to live with my mother? Jessica placed a warning hand on Rebecca's arm. My client has made it clear that her mother created an unsafe environment for her and her newborns. Reunification is premature at this stage. Dr. Reeves smiled reassuringly. We're not making any decisions today. We're gathering information to determine the best course of action for the children. The conversation that followed was tense but controlled, with Jessica skillfully navigating each question. Martha arrived midway through, providing a first-hand account of finding Rebecca in the park, confirming her story of being kicked out. I've worked with struggling families for decades, Martha told them. I know the face of a young mother who's been abandoned by her support system. As the interview progressed, Officer Cooper was called away briefly. When he returned, his expression had shifted subtly. Detective Lynn, he said, may I speak with you outside? When they returned a few minutes later, the atmosphere in the room had changed. Detective Lynn sat down, her eyes now focused intently on Rebecca. Ms. Adams, we've just received some concerning information. Your mother has a history with family services that she failed to disclose. There were reports filed when you were in elementary school, allegations of neglect and emotional abuse. Rebecca blinked in surprise. I didn't know. The cases were closed without action due to insufficient evidence, Detective Lynn continued. But in light of the current situation, we're reopening that investigation. Jessica leaned forward. What does this mean for my client and her children? For now, we need to ensure the babies have a safe, stable environment, Dr. Reeves explained. Ms. Adams, do you have somewhere you can stay? Someone who can support you while you care for your children? Before Rebecca could answer, Nathan spoke up. I have a fully furnished apartment in my building that's currently vacant. Rebecca and the twins are welcome to stay there as long as they need to. I can also provide a stipend to cover living expenses while she gets on her feet. All eyes turned to him in surprise. That's very generous, Mr. Parker, Detective Lynn said carefully. May I ask what your relationship is to Ms. Adams? Nathan met her gaze steadily. I was in a similar situation when I was younger. Someone helped me when I had nothing. I'm paying it forward. Dr. Reeves exchanged a glance with Detective Lynn. We'll need to conduct a background check, Mr. Parker, and inspect the apartment before approving such an arrangement. Of course, Nathan agreed. My assistant can arrange everything immediately. As they discussed the logistics, Rebecca stared at Nathan in disbelief. This stranger was offering her more support than her own mother ever had. Part of her wanted to refuse to prove she could manage on her own, but one look at her sleeping baby silenced that pride. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about giving Lucas and Lily the security they deserved. When the meeting finally concluded, it was decided that Rebecca and the twins would temporarily stay at a family shelter approved by Family Services until Nathan's apartment could be vetted. Jessica would begin the process of obtaining a restraining order against Vivian, and an investigation into the previous abuse allegations would be reopened. As they left the station, Rebecca turned to Nathan, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to thank you. Nathan's smile was gentle. You just focus on those babies, the rest will fall into place. What neither of them realized as they walked to Nathan's waiting car was that this was just the beginning of a journey that would uncover secrets far darker than either could imagine. Secrets that had shaped both their lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. 3 days after the police station interview, Rebecca stood in the center of a sunlit apartment, hardly able to believe what she was seeing. The space was stunning. An open floor plan with large windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, in soft creams and blues, and most surprisingly, a fully equipped nursery with 2 cribs, a changing table, and a rocking chair. This is too much, she whispered, cradling Lily against her shoulder while Lucas slept in the portable bassinet Nathan had provided. It's just sitting empty otherwise, Nathan replied, watching her reaction carefully. The company keeps it for visiting executives, but it's rarely used. Family Services had conducted their inspection the previous day, and Jessica had fast-tracked the paperwork. Rebecca had spent only 2 nights at the approved shelter before being cleared to move into Nathan's building. Even so, Rebecca said, turning to face him, I can't accept all this without giving something in return. I need to work. To pay rent. You will, Nathan assured her. Once you're settled. Sophia already mentioned she'd love to have you back at the cafe when you're ready. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jessica Chen entered, carrying her ever-present briefcase and a stack of folders. Good, you're both here, she said, setting her materials on the dining table. We need to discuss next steps. Over the next hour, Jessica outlined the legal landscape they were facing. The investigation into Vivian had uncovered more than anyone expected. Not only were there previous reports of emotional abuse toward Rebecca, but Officer Cooper had discovered financial irregularities suggesting Vivian had been misappropriating funds from Rebecca's college savings account, money left by Rebecca's father before his death. We have enough for a solid case against her, Jessica explained. But that's not our immediate concern. Right now, we need to ensure you have legal protection and financial support for the twins. She produced a stack of forms for Rebecca to sign, applications for emergency assistance, custody documents confirming Rebecca as the twins' sole guardian, and paperwork to begin recovering the missing funds. What about Jacob? Rebecca asked softly, mentioning the twins' father for the first time since Nathan had met her. Should we be worried about him trying to claim custody? Jessica's expression turned grave. Has he contacted you since you told him about the pregnancy? Rebecca shook her head. He blocked my number. Last I heard, he'd left for college in California. Then we'll deal with that if it becomes necessary, Jessica replied. For now, focus on getting settled and caring for your children. As Jessica packed up her documents, Nathan's phone rang. He stepped into the hallway to answer it, returning moments later with a concerned expression. That was my security team, he said once Jessica had left. Apparently, a woman matching your mother's description was asking questions about you in the lobby earlier today. She didn't get past reception, but I wanted you to know. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. She knows I'm here? How? The police report likely mentioned my name, Nathan explained gently. It wouldn't be hard to figure out where I live. Rebecca sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling the weight of everything crashing down on her. Will this ever end? Why can't she just leave us alone? Nathan sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Some people can't accept when they're wrong. It threatens their entire sense of self. His words carried such personal weight that Rebecca found herself studying his face more carefully. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the windows. My mother was an addict, he finally said. When I was 16, she chose her boyfriend over me. He didn't want a teenager around, so she kicked me out. He gave a short, humorless laugh. She told everyone I ran away, even convinced herself it was true. What did you do? Rebecca asked softly. Survived. Slept in shelters when I could, under bridges when I couldn't. His expression softened. Then a teacher noticed I was wearing the same clothes every day. He and his wife took me in, helped me finish school. I got scholarships, worked 3 jobs, built my company from nothing. And your mother? She died 5 years ago, Nathan said simply. We never reconciled. The regret in his voice was palpable, and Rebecca understood now why he felt so compelled to help her. She reached out impulsively, placing her hand over his. Thank you, she said, not just for the apartment, but for understanding. Nathan smiled, the sadness in his eyes receding slightly. Get some rest. I've increased security in the building, so try not to worry about your mother. You're safe here. After Nathan left, Rebecca found herself drawn to the nursery, where she gently transferred the now-awake Lucas into his new crib. The babies looked impossibly tiny in the carefully designed room, their curious eyes taking in the colorful mobile, hanging above them. We got lucky, didn't we? She whispered to them. Someone is finally on our side. She thought about Nathan's story, how different his life might have been without that teacher's intervention. It reminded her that kindness wasn't just about generous gestures. Sometimes it was about completely altering the trajectory of someone's life. That evening, as Rebecca rocked Lily to sleep, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat as she read it. "You can't hide behind your rich boyfriend forever. Those babies deserve a real family, not a teenage mother who can't even support herself. I'm filing for grandparental rights." Mom. Rebecca's hands trembled, so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She immediately forwarded the message to Jessica, then after a moment's hesitation to Nathan as well. Nathan's response came within minutes. "Don't respond. Jessica will handle this. Try to get some sleep and we'll talk in the morning." But sleep wouldn't come easily that night. Every time Rebecca closed her eyes, she saw her mother's cold expression, heard her cutting words. The threat of losing her children, the only people in the world who truly belonged to her, was too terrifying to contemplate. By morning, exhaustion had taken its toll. Rebecca moved through her routine mechanically, feeding and changing the twins with practiced motions while her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. The knock on her door at 9 a.m. brought both relief and anxiety. Nathan stood there, Jessica at his side, both wearing expressions that did little to calm her nerves. "We need to talk," Jessica said, stepping inside. "Your mother has indeed filed a petition for grandparental visitation rights. It's a long shot given the circumstances, but we need to prepare." Nathan moved immediately to the kitchen, preparing coffee while Jessica spread her documents across the dining table. Rebecca listened numbly as the lawyer outlined what would happen next: court dates, testimonies, character witnesses. "The good news," Jessica continued, "is that her text gives us evidence of harassment. I've already filed for a temporary restraining order, which should be granted by the end of the day." "Will it stop her?" Rebecca asked, bouncing Lucas gently as he fussed. "Legally, yes. Practically," Jessica shrugged. "That depends on how determined she is." Nathan brought coffee for the adults and took Lucas from Rebecca's arms with a natural ease that surprised her. The baby settled against his chest, tiny fingers clutching at his shirt. "You're good with him," Rebecca observed, momentarily distracted from her worries. Nathan smiled. "My teacher's wife, the one who took me in, ran a daycare from their home. I helped out sometimes." Jessica cleared her throat, bringing them back to the matter at hand. "There's something else you should know. I've been doing some digging into your mother's past, trying to understand her behavior patterns." She pulled a folder from her briefcase, hesitating before opening it. "Rebecca, what do you know about your father's death?" Rebecca blinked, surprised by the change in topic. "Not much. He died when I was 3. Car accident, Mom said. She doesn't talk about him." Jessica and Nathan exchanged a glance that sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. "What? What is it?" "Your father didn't die in a car accident," Jessica said gently. "According to the records I found, Thomas Adams died of an overdose. There was an investigation because the circumstances were unusual." Rebecca felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her. "What do you mean, unusual?" "The police suspected your mother might have been involved, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge her," Jessica explained. "The case was closed, but the detective made notes about inconsistencies in her story." "That's impossible," Rebecca whispered, though even as she said it, doubt crept in. Her mother had always been secretive about her father, refusing to show pictures or tell stories about him. She wouldn't. She couldn't. "We don't know anything." "For certain," Nathan interjected, giving Jessica a warning look. "This was 20 years ago and the case was closed." "But it establishes a pattern," Jessica insisted. "If your mother has a history of deception, especially about something this significant, it strengthens our position that she's not a suitable influence in the twins' lives." Rebecca felt numb. If her mother had lied about something as fundamental as her father's death, what else might she have hidden? And how could Rebecca have lived her entire life without suspecting the truth? "I need some air," she said suddenly, standing up so quickly that her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Rebecca," Nathan began, concern evident in his voice. "Just give me a minute, please." She stepped onto the balcony, closing the door behind her. The city sprawled below, thousands of lives unfolding in the morning sunlight, each with their own secrets and sorrows. She thought about her father, a man reduced to a handful of vague memories and the occasional dismissive comment from her mother. Had she ever really mourned him properly? Had she ever known him at all? Through the glass door, she could see Nathan, settling Lucas in his bassinet, while Jessica continued organizing her papers. These strangers had become her support system, uncovering truths that her own family had buried. The irony wasn't lost on her, that she'd found more honesty and care from people she'd known for days than from the woman who had raised her. Taking a deep breath, Rebecca opened the door and stepped back inside. "I want to know everything," she said firmly. "No matter how painful it is. If we're going to fight my mother, I need to understand what we're really up against." Nathan nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "Jessica has a friend in the police department who might be able to get us the original case files. It won't be easy to read," Jessica warned. "None of this is easy," Rebecca replied, glancing at her sleeping babies. "But they deserve a mother who isn't hiding from the truth, no matter how ugly it might be." As they resumed their discussion, planning their strategy against Vivian's legal maneuvers, Rebecca felt something shift inside her, a new resolve taking root. Her mother had spent years controlling the narrative, twisting reality to suit her needs. Now it was time for Rebecca to reclaim her own story. Whatever secrets lay buried in the past, she would face them, not just for herself, but for Lucas and Lily, whose future depended on her strength. The manila folder sat on Rebecca's coffee table, its contents threatening to unravel everything she thought she knew about her childhood. 3 days had passed since Jessica had dropped it off with a sympathetic squeeze of her shoulder and instructions to call any time, day or night, once she'd read it. Rebecca had placed it on the table, and there it remained, untouched as she focused on the rhythms of caring for the twins, feeding, changing, soothing their occasional cries. The routine provided a welcome distraction from the truths waiting to be revealed. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Nathan holding 2 takeout bags. "I thought you might be hungry," he said when she let him in, "and maybe in need of adult conversation." Rebecca smiled gratefully. The apartment, for all its luxury, had started to feel isolating. "You have no idea. The only words I've spoken today have been baby talk." They settled at the dining table, unpacking containers of pasta and salad. Nathan glanced at the folder still sitting on the coffee table. "You haven't opened it," he observed. Rebecca shook her head. "I'm afraid of what I'll find." "That's understandable," Nathan said, serving her a portion of fettuccine. "But knowledge is power, Rebecca. Whatever's in there, knowing it gives you an advantage. What if it's worse than we thought?" Rebecca pushed her food around with her fork. "What if my mother is capable of, I don't know, something truly horrible?" Nathan considered this. "Then we'll be better prepared to protect you and the twins." They ate in comfortable silence for Iao, a few minutes before Rebecca gathered her courage to ask something that had been nagging at her. "Nathan, why are you really doing all this? And don't say it's just because someone helped you once. This goes beyond paying it forward." He set down his fork, meeting her gaze directly. "You deserve the truth." He took a deep breath. "When I saw you at the hospital, you reminded me of someone, a young woman I knew years ago. Her name was Claire, and she was in a situation similar to yours." "What happened to her?" Rebecca asked softly. "She didn't make it," Nathan replied, his voice tight with old pain. "She had a baby at 17, was kicked out by her religious parents. I was just starting my business then, barely making ends meet myself. I offered what little help I could, but—" He trailed off, his eyes distant. "She gave her baby up for adoption and fell into depression. Overdosed 6 months later." Rebecca reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm so sorry. I've always wondered if I could have done more," Nathan continued. "When I saw you, it felt like a second chance, not to save Claire, but to make sure another young mother didn't face the world alone." His honesty touched her deeply, transforming her perception of him. Not just a wealthy benefactor with a savior complex, but a man carrying his own regrets and seeking redemption. "Thank you for telling me," she said, "and for everything you've done." After dinner, with the twins asleep in their cribs, Rebecca finally pulled the folder onto her lap. Nathan sat beside her, a silent pillar of support. "Whatever's in here," he said, "you don't have to face it alone." With trembling fingers, Rebecca opened the folder. Inside were police reports, witness statements, and autopsy results. The clinical documentation of her father's final days. She read in silence, occasionally gasping or wiping away tears. Thomas Adams hadn't simply overdosed. According to the reports, he had been found with a suspicious injection mark on his arm, despite no history of intravenous drug use. Witnesses stated he had been seeking divorce from Vivian after discovering financial improprieties. Most damning were the toxicology reports showing a drug that Thomas, a diabetic, would never have willingly taken. But the investigation had stalled due to insufficient evidence and Vivian's airtight alibi provided by her brother, who claimed they were together the entire evening. "She got away with it," Rebecca whispered, the pages slipping from her fingers. "She killed my father and spent the next 16 years pretending to mourn him." Nathan gathered the scattered papers. The case was never officially closed, just inactive. With new evidence, it could be reopened. What new evidence? This happened 17 years ago. Before Nathan could respond, his phone rang. He checked the screen, frowning. "It's Jessica. At this hour, it must be important." The call was brief but clearly disturbing. Nathan's expression darkened as he listened, and when he hung up, he immediately moved to check that the apartment door was locked. "What is it?" Rebecca asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Your mother has escalated things," Nathan explained, returning to the couch. "Jessica just got word that Vivian is claiming I'm an unfit influence, that I've inappropriately inserted myself into your life, and am keeping you from your family." Rebecca's face flushed with anger. "That's ridiculous. You've done nothing but help us." "It gets worse," Nathan continued grimly. "She's found Jacob." The room seemed to tilt around Rebecca. "Jacob? The twins' father? How?" "We don't know. But according to Jessica's source, Vivian approached him at his college in California, convinced him to fly back, and is now pushing him to file for partial custody." Rebecca felt physically ill. Jacob had wanted nothing to do with the pregnancy, had told her explicitly to take care of it before blocking her number. Now he was back in the picture, potentially able to claim rights to Lucas and Lily. "He doesn't care about them," she whispered. "He never did." "Money can be a powerful motivator," Nathan said, "and if your mother has access to your father's estate or your college fund." Rebecca stood abruptly, moving to the nursery door to check on the twins. They slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering around them. How could she protect them from this new threat? "What do we do?" she asked, returning to Nathan. "Jessica is filing emergency motions in the morning to block any custody claims until paternity is established, and Jacob's fitness as a parent can be evaluated. That will buy us some time." Rebecca nodded, though the legal maneuvers felt abstract compared to the visceral fear of losing her children. "And my mother? The file, what she did to my father?" "That's trickier," Nathan admitted. "The evidence is circumstantial, and the statute of limitations may apply to some aspects. But Jessica thinks it's worth taking to the district attorney, especially given Vivian's current actions." Rebecca's mind raced, connecting the past to the present with horrifying clarity. If she could do that to my father, what might she do to the twins? Or to me? Nathan moved closer, his expression grave. "That's my concern as well. I think we need to increase security measures, at least until the legal situation stabilizes." "What kind of measures?" "A security team for the building, monitored access to this floor, and," he hesitated, "it might be wise to have someone stay here with you at least for a few days." Under normal circumstances, Rebecca might have balked at the suggestion, proud of her independence despite her youth. But the contents of the folder had shaken her to her core, revealing a mother capable of far worse than she'd imagined. "Would you stay?" she asked, surprising herself with the request. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd feel safer with you here." Nathan's expression softened. Of course, I'll take the couch. As they prepared for the uncertain night ahead, Rebecca found herself glancing repeatedly at her sleeping babies. Everything she'd learned today about her father, about Nathan's past, about Jacob's return, had raised the stakes in this fight. But it had also strengthened her resolve. These tiny lives depended on her courage. And for the first time, she wasn't standing alone against the darkness of her mother's manipulation. She had allies now, Nathan, Jessica, even Eleanor and Sophia, people who saw her worth and recognized Vivian's toxicity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Rebecca allowed herself to take comfort in that simple truth. She was no longer alone. Morning light filtered through the curtains as Rebecca woke to the unfamiliar sound of someone moving quietly in her kitchen. For a split second, panic gripped her before she remembered. Nathan had stayed the night, sleeping on the couch to ease her fears after yesterday's revelations. She checked on the twins, both miraculously still asleep, then padded into the living room. Nathan stood at the stove, his suit jacket draped over a dining chair, shirt sleeves rolled up as he flipped pancakes. "You cook too?" she asked, stifling a yawn. Nathan turned, a spatula in hand and a slight smile on his face. "One of the first skills Mrs. Reynolds taught me when she took me in. Said no one should reach adulthood without knowing how to feed themselves properly." Rebecca smiled at the image of teenage Nathan learning to cook from his teacher's wife. These glimpses into his past helped her understand the man who had become her unexpected champion. "Coffee?" he offered, gesturing to a freshly brewed pot. "Please. The twins actually let me sleep for 4 hours straight, which feels like a miracle." They ate breakfast in companionable silence until Nathan's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression turning serious. "Jessica's already at the courthouse. She's filing the emergency motions we discussed." Rebecca set down her fork, appetite vanishing. "Do you think it will work? Can they really block Jacob from seeing the twins?" "Not indefinitely," Nathan replied honestly. "But we can establish conditions, supervised visitation, parenting classes, child support requirements. If he's only doing this for your mother's money, those hurdles might discourage him." The mention of her mother brought back the contents of the folder in vivid detail. Rebecca had tossed and turned half the night, her dreams filled with fragmented memories of her father now colored by the knowledge of his likely murder. "I keep thinking about my father," she admitted. "Trying to remember him, but the memories are so faint. I was only 3 when he died." She looked up at Nathan, her eyes filled with sorrow. "She stole him from me twice, first his life, then his memory." Nathan reached across the table, briefly covering her hand with his. "I know this is difficult, but focus on the present right now. The twins need you centered and clear-headed." As if on cue, Lily's cries echoed from the nursery, soon joined by Lucas. Rebecca sighed. "Duty calls." Nathan checked his watch. "I need to head to the office for a few hours. Jessica's sending someone from her firm to stay with you until I get back." "I don't need a babysitter," Rebecca protested automatically. "Not a babysitter," Nathan corrected gently. "Security. Until we know exactly what your mother and Jacob are planning, we can't be too careful." The gravity in his voice silenced her objections. She nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in his caution. After Nathan left, Rebecca settled into her morning routine with the twins. As she fed Lucas, her mind kept returning to Jacob. They had dated for nearly 2 years in high school, and she had genuinely believed they were in love. His reaction to her pregnancy had been a devastating betrayal, revealing a selfishness she hadn't seen before. What would he be like now, she wondered, as a reluctant father pulled into this situation by her manipulative mother. The thought of him anywhere near her babies made her skin crawl. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw a young man in a crisp suit, his ID badge clearly visible. Jessica had mentioned sending David, one of her junior associates, to keep watch while Nathan was out. "Ms. Adams," he greeted her professionally after she opened the door. "I'm David Lynn from Chen Legal. Jessica sent me to provide some assistance today." Rebecca stepped aside to let him in, noting his resemblance to Jessica. They shared the same sharp, observant eyes. Are you related to Jessica? My cousin, he confirmed with a smile. Law runs in the family. David settled in the living room, opening his laptop and setting up what appeared to be a small workstation. Don't mind me, he assured her. I've got briefs to review. Just pretend I'm not here unless you need something. Rebecca appreciated his professional discretion. Having a stranger in her space could have felt intrusive, but David faded into the background, occasionally taking calls in hushed tones or typing rapidly on his laptop. Around noon, Jessica called with an update. The emergency motion had been filed, and a hearing was scheduled for the following morning. Until then, neither Jacob nor Vivian could legally approach Rebecca or the twins. We've also petitioned to have the investigation into your father's death reopened, Jessica added. The district attorney was interested but cautious. It's been 17 years, and evidence degrades. What are our chances? Rebecca asked, pacing, the nursery with Lily on her shoulder. Hard to say. But bringing it to light puts pressure on your mother, shows her we're willing to dig into the past. That alone might make her reconsider her current course. After ending the call, Rebecca felt restless. The apartment, despite its spaciousness, suddenly seemed confining. She approached David, who looked up from his work. I need some air, she said. Would it be possible to take the twins for a short walk? There's a little park just down the block. David hesitated. Jessica's instructions were to keep you in the apartment. Please, Rebecca interrupted. I've been cooped up for days. Just 30 minutes, that's all I'm asking. David considered this, then nodded. All right, but I'm coming with you, and we stay within sight of the building. The compromise was fair enough. Rebecca quickly packed the diaper bag and prepared the twins for their first real outing since moving into the apartment. The double stroller Nathan had delivered yesterday was sleek and maneuverable, making it easy to navigate through the lobby and onto the sidewalk. The late October air carried a crispness that felt refreshing after days indoors. Rebecca pushed the stroller with David, walking beside her, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. They reached the small park where Rebecca found a bench in the sunshine. The twins were awake but content, taking in the new sights and sounds with wide eyes. They're beautiful, David commented, his professional demeanor softening as he glanced at the babies. Look just like you. Rebecca smiled, pride momentarily overshadowing her worries. Lucas has his father's chin, though, and Lily, I think she has his eyes. As soon as she mentioned Jacob, she regretted it. The brief peace of the outing was shattered, by reality crashing back in. She was in a legal battle with this man who had once claimed to love her, fighting for her right to raise her own children. Jessica's very good at what she does, David said, seeming to sense her shift in mood. I've never seen her lose a case she cared about, and she definitely cares about yours. Why do you think that is? She barely knows me. David shrugged. Jessica has a thing about families. Her own was complicated. She believes children deserve better than to be pawns in adult games. Rebecca appreciated his candor, but before she could respond, she noticed David suddenly stiffen, his gaze fixed on something. Across the street, following his line of sight, she saw a man leaning against a parked car watching them intently. We're leaving, David said quietly but firmly. Now. What is it? Rebecca asked, her heart beginning to race. That man has been following us since we left the building. Get the stroller ready. Rebecca's hands trembled as she adjusted the twins' blankets, preparing to move. The stranger across the street straightened and, to her horror, began walking toward them. David? She whispered, fear evident in her voice. Stay calm, he instructed, positioning himself between Rebecca and the approaching man. His hand moved, inside his jacket, and Rebecca wondered if he was armed. The stranger was perhaps 30, with dark hair and the lean build of someone who spent time at the gym. As he drew closer, a shock of recognition hit Rebecca like a physical blow. Jacob, she gasped. He stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. Rebecca. You need to leave, David stated firmly. Ms. Adams has a protective order pending. Any contact violates the terms of the emergency motion filed this morning. Jacob ignored him, his eyes fixed on the stroller. Are those them? My kids? Rebecca instinctively moved the stroller behind her. You lost the right to call them yours when you blocked my number and told me to take care of it. A flash of something. Shame? Anger crossed Jacob's face. I was scared, okay? 19 and about to start college. I wasn't ready. And you think I was? Rebecca countered, her voice rising. You think anyone's ever truly ready? The difference is, I stepped up. You ran away. David had his phone out now, clearly messaging someone. Mr. Mitchell, I'm giving you one more chance to leave peacefully before I call the police. Jacob held up his hands. I just want to see them. I have rights. Rights? Rebecca echoed incredulously. You haven't contributed a single dollar, haven't lost a single night's sleep. You have obligations, Jacob, not rights. Your mother said you'd be difficult. Jacob muttered, his jaw tightening. The mention of Vivian sent ice through Rebecca's veins. So it's true. You're working with her. Jacob at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. She found me at school, said you were in trouble, that you'd fallen in with some rich guy who was isolating you from your family. Rebecca laughed bitterly. Is that what she told you? Not that she kicked me out with newborn twins? Not that she's been emotionally abusing me my entire life? Look, I don't know what happened between you two. No, you don't, Rebecca interrupted, sharply. And you clearly didn't bother to find out before agreeing to whatever scheme she's concocted. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Nathan emerged, his expression thunderous. Jacob took a step back as Nathan approached, clearly recognizing a more formidable opponent. Everything all right here? Nathan asked, his voice deceptively calm. Just having a conversation with the mother of my children, Jacob replied, though his bravado was visibly faltering. A conversation that violates a court order, David interjected, showing his phone with what Rebecca assumed was confirmation of the filed motion. Nathan turned to Rebecca. Are you and the twins okay? She nodded, grateful for his arrival. We're fine. Jacob was just leaving. Jacob looked between them, his expression hardening. This isn't over. Your mother was right about him. He jerked his chin toward Nathan. What's he getting out of this arrangement, Becca? No one does something for nothing. The insinuation made Rebecca's cheeks burn with anger, but Nathan remained unruffled. Mr. Mitchell, he said evenly, I understand you're young and likely being manipulated by Vivian Adams. I'm willing to overlook this incident if you leave now and communicate through proper legal channels going forward. Jacob hesitated, clearly torn between backing down and saving face. Finally, he took a step back. Tell my kids I came to see them, he said to Rebecca. When they're old enough to understand. I'll tell them the truth, she replied. All of it. After Jacob left, the tension seemed to drain from the air. Nathan placed a protective hand on Rebecca's shoulder. Let's get you and the twins back inside. David looked mortified. Mr. Parker, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have agreed to leave the apartment. It's not your fault, Nathan assured him. We couldn't have anticipated Jacob would find us so quickly, but it does mean we need to rethink our security arrangements. Once they were back in the apartment, Rebecca collapsed onto the couch, the adrenaline crash leaving her shaky and exhausted. Nathan settled the twins in their cribs before joining her. How did he find us so fast? Rebecca wondered aloud. And how did you know to come? David texted me, Nathan explained. As for Jacob, I suspect your mother has been watching the building. She probably called him as soon as you stepped outside. The thought of her mother lurking, spying on her movements sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. I feel like a prisoner. I know, Nathan acknowledged sympathetically. But it's temporary. Once the legal proceedings are underway, we'll have more protections in place. Rebecca turned to face him, suddenly needing to address what Jacob had implied. Why are you doing all this? Really? And don't give me the line about Claire or paying it forward. Nathan considered her question carefully before responding. Those reasons are true, but not complete. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The day I saw you in the hospital, something just clicked. I can't explain it rationally, I just knew I needed to help you. But why? You're successful, handsome, could be dating models or whoever you wanted. Instead, you're babysitting a teenage mother and her drama. Nathan smiled slightly at her characterization. First, you're hardly a typical teenager. You've shown more maturity and strength than most adults I know. His expression grew more serious. And second, perhaps what I want isn't what society expects me to want. There was something in his gaze, a warmth that made Rebecca's heart flutter unexpectedly. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibility. The ringing of Nathan's phone broke the tension. Jessica's name flashed on the screen, and he answered immediately, placing it on speaker. "We have a problem," Jessica said without preamble. "Jacob just filed for emergency custody, claiming Nathan is an unstable influence with inappropriate interests in Rebecca and the twins. He's requesting an immediate hearing." Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. "He can't do that. He just showed up today for the first time. He's claiming he's been trying to see them but was prevented by Nathan's interference," Jessica continued grimly. "It's all lies, but it complicates things. The judge has scheduled a hearing for tomorrow morning. Both of you need to be there." After Jessica hung up, Rebecca buried her face in her hands. "This is a nightmare. How can they get away with these lies?" Nathan moved closer, gently pulling her hands away from her face. "Look at me, Rebecca. We're going to fight this and we're going to win. Jacob just showed his hand and it's weaker than he thinks." "How can you be so sure?" "Because truth has power," Nathan said firmly. "Your mother and Jacob are building their case on lies. All we need to do is show the judge who they really are." Rebecca wanted desperately to believe him, but fear still gnawed at her. "And if we lose? If the judge believes them?" Nathan's expression was resolute. "That won't happen, but even if the worst occurred, we would appeal, fight harder. I promise. You, Rebecca, I will not let anyone take your children from you." The conviction in his voice was like a lifeline in a stormy sea. Rebecca clung to it, needing to believe that good could triumph over the web of deceit her mother was weaving. Tomorrow would bring their first real battle in court. But tonight, with Nathan's steadfast presence beside her, Rebecca allowed herself to hope that the truth might indeed be enough to protect the fragile new family she was fighting so desperately to preserve. The county courthouse loomed before them, its stone facade imposing against the clear morning sky. Rebecca clutched the twins' diaper bag with white knuckles as she stared up at the building. Lucas and Lily were with Eleanor, who had volunteered to watch them during the hearing after learning of Jacob's custody petition. "Deep breaths," Nathan murmured beside her. He looked impeccable in a charcoal suit, every inch the successful businessman. Rebecca felt childish by comparison in her borrowed maternity dress, the nicest thing she owned but still clearly not designed for court appearances. Jessica waited at the top of the steps, elegant in a tailored navy suit, tablet in hand, and an expression of focused determination on her face. "Ready?" she asked as they approached. "Judge Harriet Monroe is presiding. She's fair but traditional, believes children need both parents whenever possible." Rebecca's heart sank. "So she'll automatically side with Jacob?" "Not automatically," Jessica corrected. "But we need to be prepared for her to weigh his claim seriously regardless of his previous absence." Inside, the courthouse bustled with activity. As they followed Jessica down a marble hallway, Rebecca caught sight of them. Jacob and her mother huddled together with a gray-haired man in an expensive suit. Vivian looked up at the same moment, her eyes locking with Rebecca's. The coldness there made Rebecca shiver. Not anger or even hatred, but something worse, a calculated emptiness, as if Rebecca were merely an obstacle to be removed. "Don't engage," Jessica whispered, gently guiding Rebecca past them into the courtroom. The hearing began promptly at 9:00 a.m. Judge Monroe, a stern-faced woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair, called the court to order. Rebecca sat between Nathan and Jessica at one table, while Jacob, Vivian, and their attorney, introduced as Harrison Wells, a family law specialist, sat at the other. This is a hearing regarding Emergency Custody Petition 47329, Mitchell versus Adams, Judge Monroe began, looking over her glasses at the assembled parties. Mr. Wells, as the petitioning party, you may begin. Wells rose smoothly, his voice resonant in the wooden chamber. Your Honor, my client, Jacob Mitchell, is the biological father of twins Lucas and Lily Adams, born October 12th of this year. Until recently, Mr. Mitchell was unaware of the circumstances surrounding their birth and his paternal rights. Rebecca clenched her jaw, fighting to maintain her composure as Wells wove a narrative that twisted reality. According to him, Jacob had been distraught upon learning of the pregnancy, but needed time to process the news. He claimed Jacob had attempted to reconnect with Rebecca multiple times, but was thwarted by her new relationship with Nathan Parker, a man with concerning influence over the teenage mother. Mr. Mitchell seeks emergency custody not to separate the children from their mother, Wells concluded, but to ensure they are raised in a healthy, appropriate environment away from Mr. Parker's undue influence. Jessica squeezed Rebecca's arm gently, a reminder to stay calm as the attorney continued painting Nathan as a predatory figure who had isolated Rebecca from her family. When it was Jessica's turn, she approached the bench with cool confidence. Your Honor, the narrative presented by opposing counsel bears little resemblance to reality, she began. Rebecca Adams was abandoned, first by Jacob Mitchell, who explicitly denied paternity and blocked all contact when informed of the pregnancy, and then by her mother, Vivian Adams, who expelled her from the family home 3 days after she gave birth. She presented the court with screenshots of Jacob's text messages to Rebecca, including the damning "take care of it" message and his subsequent blocking of her number. She submitted affidavits from Martha from the shelter and Sophia from the Ear Cafe, both testifying to finding Rebecca homeless with newborn twins. As for Nathan Parker, Jessica continued, his involvement came after Rebecca had already been abandoned. He offered temporary housing and financial support with no strings attached, the kind of community support that our society should applaud, not demonize. Judge Monroe listened intently, occasionally making notes. Ms. Chen, can you address Mr. Mitchell's concerns about the nature of Ms. Adams' relationship with Mr. Parker? He is significantly older and in a position of financial power over her. Rebecca felt heat rise to her cheeks at the implication. Your Honor, there is no romantic relationship between Ms. Adams and Mr. Parker, Jessica stated firmly. His support is humanitarian in nature. Mr. Parker was himself homeless as a teenager and has dedicated significant resources to helping vulnerable youth through his foundation. The judge turned her attention to Jacob. Mr. Mitchell, you claim to have attempted contact with Ms. Adams prior to the birth. Can you provide evidence of these attempts? Jacob shifted uncomfortably. They were phone calls, Your Honor. I don't have records. From a blocked number, Jessica interjected. Because Ms. Adams's phone records show no incoming calls from Mr. Mitchell's number in the past 9 months, Wells quickly intervened. Your Honor, my client was understandably nervous about the situation. His communication methods may have been imperfect, but his intention to be involved is sincere. Judge Monroe's expression remained neutral. And, Ms. Adams, what are your thoughts on Mr. Mitchell's sudden interest in fatherhood? Rebecca stood, her legs trembling slightly. Your Honor, Jacob made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with me or the pregnancy. He hasn't contributed a single dollar to their care, hasn't lost a minute of sleep, hasn't changed a single diaper. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. He only appeared after my mother found him and convinced him to file for custody. This isn't about his desire to be a father. It's about my mother's desire to control me. That's a serious accusation, Judge Monroe noted. Do you have evidence of this collusion? Your Honor, Jessica intervened. We have reason to believe Vivian Adams is using Jacob Mitchell as a proxy to gain access to the children after being denied contact due to concerns about her treatment of Ms. Adams. She then presented the police reports regarding Rebecca's childhood, the investigation into Thomas Adams's suspicious death, and the recent text messages from Vivian that constituted harassment. As these documents were reviewed, Rebecca noticed her mother's composure slipping. Vivian's knuckles had turned white where she gripped the table and a muscle twitched in her jaw. "Ms. Adams," Judge Monroe addressed Vivian directly. "These allegations concerning your late husband's death are disturbing. Would you care to respond?" Vivian straightened, her voice cold and controlled. "That investigation was closed years ago, Your Honor. I fail to see its relevance to my grandchildren's welfare today." "The relevance," Jessica countered, "is pattern of behavior. If Ms. Adams was capable of such actions then, how can we trust her involvement with vulnerable infants now?" The courtroom fell silent as Judge Monroe reviewed the documents before her. Rebecca held her breath, unable to read the judge's expression. "I've heard enough for today," Judge Monroe finally declared. "This case requires more thorough consideration than an emergency hearing allows. I'm denying the emergency petition for custody change but ordering a full custody evaluation before making any permanent rulings." Relief flooded through Rebecca, though it was tempered by the judge's next words. "Until the evaluation is complete, primary physical custody remains with Ms. Adams. However, I am granting Mr. Mitchell supervised visitation rights, 2 hours twice weekly, at the County Family Center. Additionally, all parties are to refrain from making disparaging comments about each other in the presence of the children." The judge fixed her gaze on Nathan. "Mr. Parker, while your assistance to Ms. Adams appears well-intentioned, this court is concerned about the appearance of impropriety. I strongly suggest establishing more formal arrangements regarding housing and financial support through proper legal channels." With a bang of her gavel, the hearing was adjourned. Rebecca sat frozen, processing the mixed outcome. They had won the immediate battle. The twins would remain with her. But Jacob had gained visitation rights, and the judge had cast a shadow over Nathan's support. Outside the courtroom, Jessica attempted to put a positive spin on the ruling. "This is actually good news. We've maintained primary custody, and supervised visitation is the safest option. If Jacob must be involved at all. But the judge thinks Nathan's a predator," Rebecca said miserably. "Not a predator," Jessica corrected. "She's concerned about the informal nature of the arrangement, which is easily addressed. We'll draw up proper documentation for the apartment and stipend." Nathan had been unusually quiet since leaving the courtroom. "Perhaps the judge has a point," he said finally. "My involvement has complicated things for you, Rebecca." "Don't say that," Rebecca protested. "Without you, I'd still be homeless, or worse, forced to go back to my mother." Nathan's expression softened. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm suggesting we follow the judge's advice and formalize arrangements to remove any appearance of impropriety." As they discussed next steps, Rebecca noticed her mother and Jacob exit the courtroom, followed by their attorney. Vivian's eyes met, hers briefly, and the look sent ice through Rebecca's veins. It wasn't the look of someone who had lost. It was the look of someone already planning their next move. "Can we leave?" Rebecca asked quietly. "I need to see the twins." In the car, Rebecca sat silently, staring out the window as Nathan drove them to Eleanor's home. The court hearing had left her emotionally drained, but more than that, it had opened her eyes to the reality of the battle ahead. This wasn't just about keeping the twins away from Jacob or her mother. It was about proving her own worth as a parent despite her youth. "You did well in there," Nathan said, breaking the silence. "The judge saw your maturity and commitment." "I don't feel like I did well," Rebecca admitted. "I felt like a child playing dress-up, trying to convince adults I belong at the grown-up table." "That's not what I saw," Nathan countered. "I saw a young woman fighting fiercely for her children. Age doesn't determine strength of character, Rebecca." His words warmed her, but doubt still lingered. "The custody evaluation scares me. What if they decide I'm too young, too inexperienced?" "Then we'll address those concerns," Nathan replied, simply. "If they recommend parenting classes, you'll take them. If they want to see more stability, we'll demonstrate it. Whatever challenges they identify, we'll face them together." Together. The word hung between them, carrying more weight than perhaps either of them realized. They arrived at Eleanor's modest suburban home, where the nurse greeted them warmly. The twins were sleeping peacefully in a borrowed portable crib. Angels, both of them, Eleanor assured Rebecca. How did the hearing go? As Nathan explained the outcome, Rebecca knelt beside the crib, drinking in the sight of her babies. Lucas's tiny fist was curled around the edge of his blanket, while Lily's rosebud mouth worked in her sleep as if she were still nursing. The fierce love that welled up inside Rebecca was almost painful in its intensity. I won't let anyone take you from me, she whispered, gently stroking Lily's cheek. I promise. On the drive back to the apartment, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is just the beginning. You can't win against me, I always get what I want. Mom. Rebecca showed the message to Nathan, who immediately pulled over and called Jessica. Forward it to me, Jessica instructed, after hearing about the text. This violates the restraining order. We'll file a contempt motion immediately. Rebecca did as instructed, then turned off her phone, suddenly exhausted by it all. I keep thinking this can't get worse, she said, leaning her head against the car window. But she always finds a way to prove me wrong. Nathan reached across the console and squeezed her hand gently. She's escalating because she's desperate. The truth about your father, the court seeing through her manipulation. She's losing control, and that terrifies her. What if she never stops? Rebecca asked, voicing her deepest fear. What if my whole life becomes about fighting her? She'll stop, Nathan assured her, his voice firm with conviction. One way or another, this will end, Rebecca. And when it does, you'll be free to build the life you and your children deserve. As they resumed driving, Rebecca found herself studying Nathan's profile. In the weeks since their first meeting, he had become more than a benefactor or even a friend. He had become her anchor in the storm, a fixed point of strength she could turn to when everything else seemed to be crumbling. The judge's concerns about their relationship echoed in her mind. Was there something inappropriate about their connection? Rebecca didn't think so, but she was self-aware enough to recognize the complexity of her feelings toward Nathan, gratitude mixed with admiration, trust deepening into something she wasn't ready to name. Whatever it was, she knew one thing with certainty. She couldn't face what lay ahead without him. And for now, that knowledge would have to be enough. 2 weeks after the court hearing, a fragile routine had emerged in Rebecca's life. The custody evaluation was scheduled for the following month, giving her time to prepare. Jacob had attended his supervised visits with the twins, though Rebecca noticed his interest seemed to wane with each session. He'd spent most of the time checking his phone while a social worker observed his minimal interaction with Lucas and Lily. Meanwhile, Jessica had formalized Nathan's assistance with proper legal documentation. Rebecca now had a 1-year lease on the apartment at a nominal rent, and a separate stipend agreement classified as child support assistance that would help her finish high school and eventually pursue college. On a crisp Thursday morning, Rebecca sat at the kitchen table with a stack of textbooks. With Nathan's help, she'd enrolled in an online program to complete her high school diploma, determined to build a stable future for her children. The Pythagorean theorem is torturing me, she groaned as Nathan entered, carrying coffee for both of them. I could help, he offered, setting a mug beside her. Math was my best subject. Rebecca smiled gratefully. Later, maybe. Right now, I need a break. She glanced toward the nursery where the twins were napping. It's so quiet. I should enjoy it while it lasts. Nathan settled across from her, his expression slightly tentative. I've been meaning to talk to you about something. The seriousness in his tone made Rebecca sit up straighter. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, he assured her quickly. It's about your father's case. Jessica heard from the district attorney yesterday. Rebecca's heart quickened. And? They're officially reopening the investigation into his death. New? Forensic techniques might reveal evidence that wasn't detectable 17 years ago. Rebecca let out a slow breath. What does this mean for the custody case? It could be significant. If the investigation uncovers evidence against your mother, it strengthens our position that she's unfit to be around the twins. And if it doesn't? Nathan hesitated. Then we focus on the present, her behavior now, not the past. Rebecca nodded. processing this development. Part of her feared what the investigation might reveal, but another part desperately wanted the truth about her father's death, regardless of how painful it might be. "There's something else," Nathan continued, his expression softening. "Jessica's investigator found something, or rather, someone you should know about." Rebecca felt a flicker of apprehension. "Who?" "Your father had a brother, your uncle. His name is Michael Adams." The revelation hit Rebecca like a physical blow. "An uncle? That's impossible. My mother always said Dad was an only child." "She lied," Nathan said gently. "Michael is 3 years younger than Thomas was. They were close until your father met your mother. After that, they lost touch." Rebecca's mind reeled with questions. "Where is he? Why didn't he ever contact me?" "He lives in Seattle. And according to what we've learned, he tried to reach out after your father died, but your mother blocked him, told him you wanted nothing to do with your father's family." Anger flashed through Rebecca, hot and sudden. Another connection stolen from her by her mother's manipulation. Another lie added to the foundation of her life. "Does he know about me now? About the twins?" Nathan nodded. "Jessica contacted him. He was shocked to learn about your situation. He wants to meet you but understands if you're not ready." Rebecca stood, too agitated to remain seated. "My entire life has been built on lies. Every time I think I've discovered the full extent of her deception, there's more." Nathan rose and approached her cautiously. "I know this is overwhelming." "Overwhelming?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "That doesn't begin to cover it. I have an uncle I never knew existed. My father was murdered. My mother is trying to steal my children." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very young and lost. "Who am I supposed to be in all this, Nathan? The grieving daughter, the long-lost niece, the teenage mother fighting for her babies?" Without hesitation, Nathan closed the distance between them, drawing her into a gentle embrace. "You're Rebecca," he said softly against her hair. Strong, resilient Rebecca who's surviving despite everything thrown at her. She allowed herself to lean into his warmth, drawing comfort from his steady presence. The boundaries between them had blurred over these weeks of shared crisis, developing into something neither of them had named, but both felt growing stronger each day. "What if I want to meet him?" she whispered. "My uncle. Then we'll arrange." Nathan replied simply. Rebecca pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "We?" A slight flush colored Nathan's cheeks. "I just meant I'm here to help, however you need me." The tenderness in his eyes made Rebecca's heart flutter. For a brief moment, she wondered what would happen if she stood on her tiptoes and closed the small gap between them. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. The moment was broken by Lily's cry from the nursery, followed quickly by Lucas joining in. Rebecca stepped back, the spell shattered by reality's intrusion. "I should check on them," she said, her voice slightly breathless. Nathan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Of course." As Rebecca tended to the twins, her mind swirled with everything she'd learned, an uncle she never knew existed, a reopened investigation into her father's murder, and feelings for Nathan that were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Rebecca sat on her balcony, phone in hand. Jessica had sent Michael Adams contact information, and after hours of internal debate, Rebecca had decided to reach out. Her finger hovered over the call button, doubts assailing her. What if he wasn't what she hoped? What if he was just another disappointment, another person who would eventually let her down? A soft knock at the balcony door interrupted her thoughts. Nathan stood there, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one. "It's getting cold out here." Rebecca accepted the tea gratefully. "I was about to call him. My uncle." Nathan sat in the chair beside her. "Would you like privacy?" She shook her head. "Would you stay? Please." He nodded, and his presence gave her the courage to press the call button. The phone rang several times before a deep voice answered. "Hello?" Rebecca's throat tightened. "Is this Michael Adams?" Yes, who's calling? My name is Rebecca Adams. I'm Thomas's daughter. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Rebecca? I can't believe it's really you. The emotion in his voice was so genuine that tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes. It's me. I just found out about you today. Oh, Rebecca. Michael's voice broke slightly. I've thought about you so many times over the years. Your father was my best friend, not just my brother. When he died, the conversation flowed more easily than Rebecca had expected. Michael told her stories about her father, his kindness, his quick wit, his love for Rebecca that had been the center of his world. They had been close until Vivian came between them, isolating Thomas from his family. She was always controlling, Michael explained. But Thomas loved her, at least at first. By the time he realized how toxic she was, you were already born. He was planning to leave her, to seek custody of you. That's why she killed him, Rebecca whispered, the truth finally. Crystallizing in her mind, Michael's silence spoke volumes. The police could never prove it, he finally said. But yes, I've always believed she was responsible. When the call ended an hour later, Rebecca had made plans to meet Michael in person. He would fly in the following weekend, eager to connect with his niece and meet his grandnephew and niece. He sounds wonderful, Rebecca said to Nathan as she set down her phone. He has Dad's laugh. At least, it sounds like what I remember. Nathan smiled, genuinely happy for her. I'm glad you found him. Family is precious. Yes, Rebecca agreed, looking at him thoughtfully. It is. The unspoken question hung between them. What kind of family were they forming? Nathan, Rebecca, and the twins had created something that defied conventional labels, something that had grown from crisis but blossomed into something deeper. As they sat together under the night sky, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for survival, but for happiness. For a future where the shadows of her past no longer determined her path forward. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, with Nathan beside her and the knowledge that she wasn't as alone in the world as she'd believed, Rebecca allowed herself to dream of what could be rather than fear what might come. Michael Adams was exactly like the voice on the phone, had suggested, warm, genuine, and with a smile that struck Rebecca with painful familiarity. He had her father's eyes, the same gentle crinkles at the corners when he smiled, the same cleft in his chin that she sometimes caught glimpses of in old photographs. Their meeting took place at a quiet cafe near Rebecca's apartment, chosen for its privacy and proximity to home in case the twins needed her. Nathan had offered to stay with Lucas and Lily to give Rebecca space for this reunion, but she'd insisted he join them. His steady presence had become her anchor, and facing this emotional milestone without him felt unthinkable. Rebecca, Michael breathed when she entered the cafe, rising immediately from his seat. He hesitated, clearly unsure if he should embrace her or maintain a respectful distance. Rebecca made the decision for him, stepping forward into his arms. The hug felt both strange and familiar, like finding a piece of a puzzle she hadn't known was missing. You look so much like him, Michael said as they separated, his eyes suspiciously bright. Same smile, same determination in your eyes. They settled at the table, Nathan sitting beside Rebecca after shaking Michael's hand warmly. Over coffee and pastries, Michael shared stories of her father, childhood adventures, teenage mishaps, the dreams Thomas had harbored before his death. He was so proud of you, Michael said, sliding a small photo album across the table. I brought these. Thought you might want to see them. Rebecca's hands trembled as she opened the album. Inside were photographs she'd never seen before. Her father as a young boy, as a teenager with Michael at his college graduation. And most precious of all, photos of him holding Rebecca as a baby, looking at her with undisguised adoration. Don't remember him looking at me like this, she whispered, tracing the image with her fingertip. He adored you, Michael confirmed. Which is why what happened makes no sense. Thomas would never have taken his own life, would never have left you voluntarily. The conversation turned to the reopened investigation. Michael had already spoken with the district attorney, sharing his own suspicions and evidence he'd gathered over the years. Thomas called me the night before he died, Michael revealed, his voice dropping. Said he'd found evidence that Vivian was embezzling from his company. He was planning to confront her, then file for divorce and seek full custody of you. Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. She killed him to prevent that. Michael nodded grimly. That's always been my belief. But proving it after all this time. They're trying, Nathan interjected. Forensic technology has advanced considerably. They're re-examining evidence using methods that weren't available 17 years ago. As their conversation continued, Rebecca found herself studying her uncle, searching for more connections to the father she barely remembered. Michael was a software engineer, unmarried but in a long-term relationship with a man named David, passionate about environmental causes, all details that painted a picture of the extended family she might have had. I should have tried harder to find you, Michael said, regret evident in his voice. After the funeral, Vivian blocked every attempt, changed your phone numbers, returned my letters. Eventually, I hired a private investigator, but by then she'd gotten a restraining order against me based on false allegations. Rebecca's jaw dropped. What kind of allegations? Michael shifted uncomfortably. She claimed I was unstable, that I blamed you for Thomas's death and had threatened you. None of it was true, but the court granted the order. It expired years ago, but by then I'd lost track of where you were. The familiar pattern of her mother's manipulation sent anger coursing through Rebecca. How many relationships had Vivian poisoned? How many connections had she severed to maintain her control? She can't keep us apart anymore, Rebecca said firmly, reaching for Michael's hand. I want you to meet the twins. They should know their great uncle. Michael's face lit up. I'd love that. They made plans for Michael to visit the apartment the following day. As they were preparing to leave, Michael pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. I've been saving this, he said, placing it in Rebecca's hands. It was Thomas's. He'd want you to have it. Inside the box was a simple silver pocket watch, its face yellowed with age, but still ticking steadily. Engraved on the back were the words, "Time reveals truth." It was our grandfather's, Michael explained. Thomas carried it every day, said it reminded him that no matter how difficult things seemed, time would eventually bring clarity. Rebecca clutched the watch, this tangible connection to the father she'd lost, tears spilling down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Back at the apartment, as Nathan prepared lunch while Rebecca fed the twins, she found herself watching him with a new perspective. The way he moved with ease through her kitchen, how he gently tickled Lucas's foot as he passed, the quiet humming under his breath, all spoke of a man who had found his place in their unconventional family. Thank you for coming today, she said as he set a sandwich before her. Having you there made it easier. Nathan smiled, that warm expression that never failed to make her heart flutter. I wouldn't have missed it. Michael seems like a good man. He is, Rebecca agreed. It's strange. Learning about my father through his eyes makes me feel like I've found a part of myself I didn't know was missing. Family connections are powerful, Nathan observed, sitting across from her, even when they've been dormant for years. Rebecca thought about that as she ate, about the family she'd been born into, the one she was creating with her children, and the found family that had formed around her in the past months. Nathan, Jessica, Eleanor, Sophia, and now Michael. People who had chosen to stand by her when her own mother had cast her aside. Later that afternoon, while the twins napped, Rebecca's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Thinking it might be Michael, she answered without hesitation. Rebecca Adams? An unfamiliar male voice, formal and slightly hesitant. Yes, this is she. This is Detective Wilson from the county prosecutor's office. I'm calling about the Thomas Adams case. Rebecca sat up straighter, her pulse quickening. Yes? We've uncovered some new evidence we'd like to discuss with you. Would you be available to come to our office tomorrow morning? Of course, Rebecca replied. Can you tell me what kind of evidence? The detective paused. I'd prefer to discuss it in person. It's sensitive in nature. After arranging the details, Rebecca sat with the phone in her hand, mind racing. New evidence. After 17 years, were they finally going to learn the truth about her father's death? She called Nathan, immediately needing to share this development. He answered on the first ring. The prosecutor's office called, she told him, words tumbling out rapidly. They've found something about my father's case. I'll clear my morning schedule, Nathan responded without hesitation. What time should I pick you up? The easy way he inserted himself into her plans. His automatic assumption that she would want him there filled Rebecca with a warmth that had become increasingly familiar. In the weeks since the court hearing, they had fallen into a comfortable partnership, not quite defined yet undeniably intimate in ways that transcended physical boundaries. She thought about the watch Michael had given her. Time reveals truth. Perhaps it applied not just to her father's case, but to her own heart as well. That evening, as Nathan prepared to leave after helping put the twins to bed, Rebecca found herself reluctant to say goodbye. They stood at her door, that now familiar current of unspoken feelings flowing between them. I keep thinking about what Michael said, she ventured, about my father planning to leave my mother to protect me from her. Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. He must have been very brave, and very much in love with you. I wonder if he knew what would happen, Rebecca continued softly. If he knew the risk he was taking. I think, Nathan said carefully, that there are some things worth risking everything for. The weight of his words hung in the air between them. They both knew he wasn't just talking about her father anymore. Rebecca took a step closer, her heart hammering in her chest. Nathan. For a breathless moment, it seemed he might close the remaining distance between them. Instead, he gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch feather-light. Get some rest, he said softly. Tomorrow will be difficult. You'll need your strength. As the door closed behind him, Rebecca leaned against it, conflicting, emotions swirling through her. Disappointment mingled with understanding, desire tempered by the knowledge that the timing wasn't right. Not yet. Not with so much still unresolved. But as she prepared for bed, her father's watch ticking steadily on her nightstand, Rebecca found herself smiling. Some things were worth waiting for. And in the morning, perhaps they would finally uncover the truth about her father's death. The first step toward the justice he deserved and the freedom she desperately sought for herself and her children. Little did she know that the evidence waiting at the prosecutor's office would shake the very foundation of everything she thought she knew about her family, revealing secrets far darker than even her worst fears had imagined. The prosecutor's office was housed in a modern glass building downtown, its sterile corridors and muted color scheme designed to convey authority and neutrality. Rebecca sat stiffly in an uncomfortable chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap as she waited for Detective Wilson. Nathan sat beside her, a reassuring presence in his tailored suit. It'll be all right, he said quietly, noticing her tension. Rebecca managed a tight smile. I keep telling myself I want the truth no matter what. But now that I'm here. It's natural to be afraid, Nathan assured her. Whatever they found, we'll face it together. Before Rebecca could respond, the door opened and a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair entered, followed by a younger woman carrying a file folder. Ms. Adams, I'm Detective Wilson. This is Assistant District Attorney Laura Mendez. He gestured to the woman beside him. Thank you for coming in. After introductions and brief pleasantries, they settled around a small conference table. Detective Wilson opened a folder, his expression turning grave. As you know, we've reopened the investigation into your father's death. New forensic techniques have allowed us to examine evidence that wasn't properly analyzed 17 years ago. Rebecca nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. What did you find? Detective Wilson and ADA Mendez exchanged glances before he continued. We've recovered partial fingerprints from the syringe used to inject your father with insulin, prints that didn't belong to Thomas. My mother's? Rebecca asked, barely able to form the words. No, Wilson replied. surprising her. The prince belonged to a man named Robert Keegan. Rebecca frowned, the name unfamiliar. Who is he? He was your mother's brother, Wilson explained, sliding a photograph across the table. The revelation hit Rebecca like a physical blow. My mother doesn't have a brother. She did, Mendez interjected. He died in prison 12 years ago. Manslaughter, charge, though he was initially arrested for murder in another case. Rebecca's head spun with this new information. Another secret. Another family member hidden from her. I don't understand. Are you saying my uncle killed my father? We believe. He and your mother conspired together, Wilson confirmed. Financial records show Vivian transferred $50,000 to Keegan 2 days before your father's death. Another $50,000 followed 3 days after. The timing suggests payment for services rendered, Mendez added clinically. Nathan, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. Why are you only discovering this connection now? Keegan used an alias when dealing with banks, Wilson explained. Modern software allowed us to identify patterns that weren't caught before. Plus, without DNA evidence linking him to the scene, investigators focused primarily on Vivian. Rebecca struggled to process this information. So my mother hired her own brother to kill my father? Because Dad was going to divorce her and seek custody of me? That appears to be the case, Wilson confirmed. We've recovered emails between Vivian and Keegan discussing what they called the Thomas problem and how to solve it permanently. Rebecca felt physically ill. Does my mother know you found this evidence? Wilson shook his head. Not yet. We're preparing to bring her in for questioning later today. Oh God. Rebecca pressed her hand to her mouth. She'll run. If she knows you're close to proving she orchestrated my father's murder, she'll disappear. We've been monitoring her movements, Wilson assured her. She's not going anywhere without us knowing. Rebecca wasn't convinced. She'd seen firsthand how calculating her mother could be, how she always seemed to be several steps ahead. There's more, Mendez said, her tone softening slightly. In reviewing old files related to Keegan, we found something concerning the custody case with your children. Rebecca tensed. What about it? Keegan had a son, Connor, who would be your cousin. He has a history of violence and drug offenses. Mendez slid another photo across the table, showing a man in his early 30s with the same cold eyes as her mother. Our surveillance indicates he's been meeting regularly with Vivian over the past 2 weeks. A chill ran down Rebecca's spine. You think she's planning something with him? We don't know, Wilson admitted, but given the family history, we're concerned. As a precaution, we're assigning an officer to monitor your apartment building until Vivian is in custody. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes as Wilson and Mendez outlined the next steps in the investigation. They would need Rebecca's formal statement about her mother's behavior, both past and present. They cautioned her to be vigilant, to report any unusual activity immediately. By the time they left the prosecutor's office, Rebecca felt numb. The bright midday sun seemed at odds with the darkness of what she'd learned. I need to check on the twins, she said as Nathan helped her into his car. Eleanor was watching them during the meeting, having insisted that Rebecca shouldn't bring them to the prosecutor's office. Of course, Nathan replied, pulling into traffic. He cast concerned glances at her throughout the drive. Are you all right? Rebecca stared out the window, watching the city blur past. I don't know what I am, she admitted. I just found out my mother hired her brother, an uncle I never knew existed, to murder my father. And now she might be plotting something with my cousin, another relative I never knew about. She turned to face Nathan, her eyes glistening, with unshed tears. My entire life has been built on lies. I don't even know who I am anymore. Nathan reached across the console, taking her hand firmly in his. You're Rebecca Adams. You're a loving mother to Lucas and Lily. You're brave, resilient, and stronger than you realize. Your mother's lies don't define you. His words warmed her heart, providing a momentary anchor in the swirling chaos of her emotions. I'm scared, Nathan, she confessed. Not just of what my mother might do, but of what all this means for me. Am I destined to become like her? Is there something in my blood? Some genetic predisposition to— Stop, Nathan interrupted gently, but firmly. You are nothing like her. The very fact that you're worried about it proves that. Vivian has never shown a moment of self-doubt or introspection. You're breaking the cycle, Rebecca. When they reached Eleanor's house, Rebecca practically ran to the door. Her need to hold her babies overwhelming. Eleanor greeted them with her usual warmth, but Rebecca immediately sensed something was wrong. What is it? She demanded, scanning. The room for the twins. They're fine, dear, Eleanor assured her quickly. Sleeping in the portable crib in the living room. But— She hesitated. Someone was asking about you earlier. A man I didn't recognize. He said he was a friend of your mother's, wanted to know if I'd seen you. Rebecca's blood ran cold. What did he look like? As Eleanor described him, tall, dark-haired, with a scar above his right eyebrow, Rebecca realized it matched the photo of Connor Keegan, her cousin, her would-be kidnapper or worse. Nathan immediately called Detective Wilson, who promised to send officers right away. We need to move you all to a safer location, he concluded. Where? Rebecca asked, gathering the still sleeping twins with trembling hands. If they found Eleanor's house, they could find anywhere. Nathan's expression was resolute. I have a lake house about 2 hours from the city. Very private, excellent security system, few people know about it. Within 30 minutes, they had packed essentials for the twins and were in Nathan's car, following a police escort out of the city. Rebecca sat in the back between the car seats, unable to take her eyes off her babies. I should have known she would escalate, she said softly. She's never going to stop, is she? Not until she has the twins or— She couldn't finish the thought, but Nathan understood. The police will find her. The evidence against her is substantial now. Not just for your father's murder, but for the current threat against you and the children. Rebecca nodded, wanting to believe him. But as they drove further from the city, into the dense forests that would conceal Nathan's lake house, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading toward a confrontation, rather than away from one. Her mother had always been 2 steps ahead, manipulating events from the shadows. Even now, with the police aware of her crimes, Rebecca doubted Vivian would simply allow herself to be caught. We should call Michael, she said suddenly. If my mother knows about him meeting me, he could be in danger too. Nathan nodded, already, dialing on his car's Bluetooth system. I'll have him meet us at the lake house. He'll be safer with us. The call connected, but instead of Michael's voice, they heard only silence. Michael, Nathan called. Are you there? There was a rustling sound, then a voice that sent ice through Rebecca's veins. I'm afraid Michael is indisposed at the moment, Vivian Adams said smoothly, but I'd be happy to take a message. Rebecca's heart stopped. Mom, what have you done? To him? Nothing permanent, Vivian replied, her tone chillingly casual. Yet, that depends entirely on you, Rebecca. What do you want? Nathan demanded, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Simple. I want my grandchildren. Vivian's voice hardened. Bring them to the old family cabin by midnight. Come alone, Rebecca. No police, no lawyer, and especially no Mr. Parker. Or, Michael won't live to see morning. The call disconnected, leaving them in stunned silence. The police escort ahead of them continued driving, unaware of the horrifying development. We need to tell the police, Nathan said, already reaching for his phone. No! Rebecca grabbed his arm. You heard her. If we involve the police, she'll kill Michael. Rebecca, we can't just hand the twins over to her. You know what she's capable of. I'm not going to give her my babies, Rebecca said firmly, but I'm not abandoning Michael either. He's the only real family I have left. Nathan glanced at her, in the rearview mirror, his expression torn between admiration and fear. What are you suggesting? Rebecca took a deep breath, an idea forming in her mind, a dangerous, desperate idea. We need to set a trap, she said, and I'm going to be the bait. The old family cabin loomed before Rebecca like something from a nightmare. Weathered logs blackened by years of neglect, windows glinting like empty eyes in the moonlight. This place had featured in her childhood memories. brief, infrequent visits that always ended with her mother's inexplicable haste to leave. Now, Rebecca understood why. This cabin held secrets. "You don't have to do this," Nathan whispered from the driver's seat, the car hidden among dense trees a quarter-mile from the cabin. "Yes, I do." Rebecca's voice was steady despite her racing heart. She glanced at the twins sleeping in their car seats, blissfully unaware of the danger surrounding them. The plan will work. It has to. The plan had come together in frantic whispers. During the drive, Jessica had contacted her investigator, who was positioned in the woods with Detective Wilson and a tactical team. They would move only on Rebecca's signal, a text message containing a single word: "Now." "Remember," Nathan said, grasping her hand, "your only job is to confirm Michael is alive and locate him in the cabin. Once you've done that, send the text. Don't try to be a hero." Rebecca nodded, though determination burned in her eyes. "Keep them safe," she whispered, brushing her fingertips over the twins' cheeks one last time. "With my life," Nathan promised. The walk to the cabin seemed endless, each step carrying Rebecca closer to a confrontation 17 years in the making. The gravel crunched beneath, her feet announcing her arrival. The cabin door swung open before she could knock. Vivian stood framed in the doorway, her familiar cold smile sending chills down Rebecca's spine. "Right on time," Vivian said. "Where are my grandchildren?" "Safe," Rebecca replied evenly. "Where's Michael?" Vivian's smile tightened. "Inside, alive, as promised." Rebecca stepped over the threshold, into the belly of the beast. The cabin's interior was sparsely furnished: a table, chairs, a sagging couch, and there, bound to a chair, in the corner, was Michael. A bruise darkened his cheek and duct tape covered his mouth, but his eyes widened when he saw Rebecca. "Let him go," Rebecca demanded. "The children first," Vivian countered. "I need to call Nathan, tell him to bring them." Vivian's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "No phones. I'll have Connor fetch them." A man emerged from the back room. Connor Keegan, the cousin she'd never met, his eyes carrying the same coldness as her mother's. "The car's a quarter-mile down the access road," Rebecca said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Blue sedan," as Connor left. Rebecca caught Michael's gaze, hoping he could read the silent message in her eyes. "Hold on. Help is coming." The cabin fell into deathly silence as Connor's footsteps faded into the night. Rebecca stood facing her mother, fighting to maintain her composure as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Every maternal instinct screamed at her to run back to her children, but she forced herself to stand firm. The plan depended on her keeping Vivian distracted long enough for Connor to reach the car and find not the twins, but Detective Wilson and his team lying in wait. "Why?" Rebecca asked, breaking the silence. "Why all of this? Why kill Dad? Why try to take my babies?" Vivian smiled thinly, settling into a chair as if they were having a casual conversation over tea. "Your father was going to ruin everything. He'd discovered my financial arrangements, threatened to take you away." She waved her hand dismissively. "He left me no choice. And my babies. What threat do they pose to you?" "They're my legacy, Rebecca." Vivian's voice softened in a way that was more chilling than her anger. "You're too young, too naive to raise them properly. They deserve better." "Better than a mother who loves them," Rebecca countered, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. "Better than being with someone who would die to protect them." Michael made a muffled sound behind his gag, drawing Vivian's irritated glance. "My dear brother-in-law still doesn't understand family loyalty," Vivian commented, her tone dripping with disdain. "Neither did your father." Rebecca's hand inched toward her pocket where her phone waited. She needed to stall for more time. "What about your brother, Robert Keegan? Was he loyal when you paid him to murder Dad?" Vivian's eyes widened briefly before narrowing to dangerous slits. "You've been busy. I underestimated you." "The police know everything," Rebecca pressed on. "About Dad's murder. About Robert. About Connor. They've reopened the case. It doesn't matter, Vivian replied with unsettling confidence. By morning, we'll be gone. You'll have had a tragic accident. Grief-stricken young mother, overwhelmed by responsibilities. She gestured toward Michael. He tried to save you, poor thing, and I'll be the devoted grandmother, stepping in to raise the orphaned twins. The coldness with which she outlined this plan sent ice through Rebecca's veins. This wasn't just about control anymore. Vivian intended to kill them both. A distant shout pierced the night, followed by what sounded like a scuffle. Vivian's head snapped toward the window. Connor should have been back by now, she murmured, rising from her chair. This was Rebecca's chance. As Vivian moved toward the window, Rebecca pulled out her phone and quickly typed "now" before her mother could turn back. "What are you doing?" Vivian demanded, spinning around. "Ensuring my children never know your kind of love," Rebecca answered, her voice steady with newfound strength. Vivian's face contorted with rage. She lunged forward, but Rebecca was ready, dodging her grasp and positioning herself protectively in front of Michael. "It's over, Mom," she said. "The police are already here." As if on cue, shouts and the thudding of footsteps surrounded the cabin. Detective Wilson's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Vivian Adams, this is the police. The cabin is surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Vivian's expression transformed from rage to calculating calm in an instant. Her hand disappeared into her jacket, emerging with a small pistol that she pointed directly at Rebecca. "If I can't have them," she said coldly, "neither will you." Door burst open. Everything happened at once. Officers storming in, Vivian's finger tightening on the trigger, and Nathan appearing from nowhere, throwing himself toward Rebecca. A deafening crack split the air. Then silence. The morning sun streamed through the hospital window, casting golden light across Nathan's sleeping form in the chair beside Rebecca's bed. 6 months had passed since that night at the cabin. 6 months of healing, growth, and rebuilding from the ashes of the past. Rebecca watched Nathan's chest rise and fall, love swelling in her heart for this man who had literally taken a bullet for her. The scar on his shoulder was nearly healed now, a permanent reminder of his sacrifice. That night had ended with Vivian in handcuffs, screaming accusations as she was led away. Her bullet had grazed Nathan's shoulder instead of striking Rebecca's heart as intended. In the chaos, Michael had managed to free himself and was the one who finally subdued Vivian, tackling her to the ground despite his bound hands. The subsequent weeks brought a flurry of legal proceedings. Vivian was charged with Thomas's murder, with attempted murder of Rebecca and Nathan, and with kidnapping Michael. The evidence was overwhelming. Jacob, faced with the truth about his co-conspirator, quickly dropped his custody petition and disappeared, back to California, signing away his parental rights in exchange for immunity from charges of conspiracy. The twins, now 9 months old, slept peacefully in the portable crib nearby. Lucas had recently learned to pull himself up, while Lily was already attempting her first wobbly steps. They were thriving, growing more curious and joyful each day. "Morning," Nathan murmured, his eyes fluttering open to find Rebecca watching him. He smiled, that warm, gentle smile that had been her beacon through the darkest storm. "Morning," she replied softly. "You should have gone home to sleep. The couch in this hospital room isn't exactly comfortable." Nathan stretched, wincing, slightly at the pull on his healing shoulder. "And Miss Lucas's first checkup after the ear infection? Not a chance." Their relationship had evolved gradually, naturally over these months. Neither had pushed or rushed, both understanding that Rebecca needed time to find herself after a lifetime of her mother's manipulation. But love had grown nonetheless, undeniable and profound. "Michael called this morning," Rebecca said, reaching for Nathan's hand. "The renovations on his house are finished. He's invited us for dinner next weekend to celebrate." Michael had become a constant in their lives, the uncle she'd never known proving to be the family she'd always needed. He had bought a house just 30 minutes away, wanting to be close to his newfound family without encroaching on their independence. "I'd like that," Nathan replied, squeezing her hand gently. "And Jessica called yesterday. The adoption paperwork is almost complete." Rebecca's heart swelled at the mention. Nathan was legally adopting the twins, ensuring they would always have a father who cherished them. The journey to this decision had been thoughtful and measured, with Rebecca finally proposing it after months of watching Nathan's unwavering devotion to her children. A soft knock interrupted their moment. Dr. Rivera entered with a bright smile. "Good news," she announced, reviewing the chart in her hand. "Lucas's infection has cleared completely. Both babies are in perfect health." Relief washed over Rebecca. The twins had been remarkably resilient through everything, but every minor illness still filled her with worry. "Thank you, doctor," Nathan said, rising to shake her hand. As they prepared to leave the hospital, gathering the twins and their seemingly endless supplies, Rebecca paused to look at the small family they had created. Not bound by blood but by choice, by love that had been tested in fire and emerged stronger. Her father's pocket watch ticked steadily in her purse, its inscription more meaningful now than ever. Time reveals truth. The truth had indeed been revealed, not just about her mother's crimes, but about Rebecca's own strength, about the capacity for love and healing that had survived even the darkest betrayal. Outside, the spring air carried the scent of new beginnings. Nathan secured the twins in their car seats before turning to Rebecca, taking both her hands in his. "I've been thinking," he said, a slight nervousness in his voice that she rarely saw. "The lease on your apartment is ending next month." Rebecca nodded, already guessing where this was headed. "It is. Move in with me," Nathan said simply, "not just as a temporary arrangement, as a family, you, me, Lucas, and Lily." Rebecca smiled, tears of joy pricking at her eyes. "I thought you'd never ask." Their kiss was gentle, full of promise for the future they would build together. Behind them, Lucas babbled happily while Lily reached for the sunlight streaming through the car window. The long night was over. Dawn had broken at last,